Today on the Tim Marner podcast show, we've got David Germain, the CEO of the Anderton Centre in Rivington, in our hometown of Bolton.
Hey.
Mate,
How are we doing?
tell people what the Anderton Centre is. I'm sorry, I know we said we're going to repeat it, but we need to get this message out there. What is the Anderton Centre, mate?
Well, it's probably my top favourite subject to talk about, so hopefully in the right place. The Anderton Centre is an amazing facility. We're so lucky to have it on the outskirts of Bolton, up at Rivington, based on the banks of Lower Rivington Reservoir. And we describe ourselves as an outdoor learning centre. So what's outdoor learning? What does that mean? Well, predominantly, we look after education, community and voluntary sector groups, so schools, colleges, universities will come and visit us for day or residential visits and take part in loads of different activities. So for lots of us, we kind of have to hark back to perhaps our primary school days when we were perhaps dragged out on residentials, dragged out by that one teacher who wanted to get us out walking or go and do some climbing or canoeing, and it's all those kind of activities. So on the water, we've got things like sailing, canoeing, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, improvised raft building. On the land, it's high roped activities, it's archery, it's axe throwing, it's bushcraft, lighting fires, back to nature kind of stuff. So that's, so predominantly what we do as a charitable organisation. But we're also open to the general public, so anybody can come down for birthday parties, events, their own family bookings. We have hire sessions for stand-up paddleboarding and sit on top kayaking. We also have a number of courses, so if you fancy doing something different this year, learn to sail, learn to kayak, learn to navigate, all kind of manner of things. And I suppose the final kind of piece in that jigsaw is we're also open for corporates and businesses. So we're a training and conference facility. We can hold conferences for up to 100 people, and we do all our own in-house catering, and we sort of add that kind of personal touch. And for businesses that are sort of serious about team development and talent management and employment retention and things like this, we do corporate team development. So we'll work with a business to perhaps understand perhaps an area they're looking to improve, whether it's communication, whether it's developing leaders within their team, or even just building some resilience and some cohesion within the team. And we'll deliver some corporate team building using the outdoor activities. So loads going on.
How did you get into it in the first place? Where's your sort of love of the outdoors come from?
How did I get into it? I suppose I was pretty lucky in that my dad was involved with the Scout Association, so as a kid I was involved with kind of Cubs and Scouts before sort of dropping out and stuff, and that's where I was kind of introduced to some of these activities. But my initial love, if you like, was sailing. And it sort of creates this kind of grandeur of sort of silver spoon, sort of high wealth, and that's not the case at all. I learned to sail on a tiny little pond just outside my hometown in Crewe in Cheshire, a really small piece of water, and it was just every Saturday then down the sailing club, just building friendship groups and getting out. And it kind of got to, with a lot of people, age 16, and you sort of get told, well, you need to start paying your way here, so you either need to go and get a job in McDonald's or teach people sailing. So there's an opportunity for me to do my dinghy instructor at the time, and then that was it then. It was kind of, how can I not work for the rest of my life and continue to enjoy, and that opened up loads of opportunities. And I lived out in Croatia for a year, lived in Australia for 6 months, teaching these kind of activities before coming back. And then, like a lot of things, it becomes a bit of a qualification chase, so you want to become more employable, so you go off and train in different areas, so kind of multi-qualified. And then really I kind of found my initial niche within SEN, so special educational needs education, and in particular young people with behavioural difficulties, so social emotional behavioural difficulties. I myself as a child, it would jump back, we're talking 35 years, but the kind of buzzword at the moment, obviously ADHD and things like that, wasn't really diagnosed back then, so I was diagnosed as a hyperactive child, which is always quite funny describing that to people now, because I'm probably one of the most laid-back people ever. But yeah, so I kind of could empathise with those young people and some of those challenges they were perhaps going through. School at the time wasn't really for me. I wasn't about four walls. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be using my hands, using my skills, interacting with people. So that's kind of how I found my niche, and sort of my initial part of my career was all based around teaching, and in particular working with those quite challenging young people.
How did the Anderton Centre come on board then? How did that like
come into
play?
Really kind of a series of opportunities with a lot of careers. They get to a point where you move further away from perhaps what you originally start out to doing, and once I decided to leave teaching, I went back into kind of centre management. And so I was a centre manager of a couple of commercial centres. And I'd always heard of the Anderton Centre. I'd actually, ironically, used to bring my school kids up Rivington Pike, just as part of some of their outdoor stuff. And we'd look down onto the water and we'd see this beautiful piece of water, this tiny little boat shed. And from I used to think it was a really small charity that didn't really do much. And then originally the centre manager role came up, and so I was ready to make the next sort of step in my career, if you like. So I pumped for it and got it, and it was a pretty challenging kind of opening couple of months, to be honest, because I sort of came on board in the June-July time.
What you brought on board to do?
Originally, sort of operations,
Right.
so really driving the health and safety, safeguarding, those kind of things, working under a chief executive at the time. So there was no real kind of business development or financial side of thing. I was purely operations. But it came quite clear very quickly that there was a few things, where any new job, you're just trying to get your feet under the table, aren't you? But I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I've just come from a commercial venture that their busiest months are June, July and August. And I'm kind of in a situation here where it's kind of quite quiet. What's going on? This can't be, viable.
What was the reason for that?
I think it just used to run a bit like a school.
Right.
So the history behind it is there was quite a large grant that was brought on to start the charity, and they used to do a lot of work. I don't know if you're familiar with things like the NCS, so the National Citizenship Scheme, and that used to bring in quite a big chunk of money. It was David Cameron's baby, back a few years ago, and really that money sort of chipped away until it was very, very little. And I don't think they replaced that income.
Right.
So it was a bit of a shock to the system, and there was a few other things and the way it was kind of run and stuff. Anyway, long story short, I flew out on holiday in September to actually receive a text message from the CEO at the time to say, it's insolvent, we're closing the doors. That's it, job done. So the 3 months into a new job. So, obviously panic station, spent my 2 weeks on holiday frantically trying to find a job. Anyway, luckily I had an opportunity to come back and sit with a couple of the trustees. And the trustees of our charity at the time were, all volunteers, all good work, volunteers, but not really kind of, business driven, stuff like that. And I just kind of put a bit of a really loose pitch together and just said, listen, you've got something here. It's an absolutely amazing facility. A couple of the issues are, one, you very proudly announce yourself as Lancashire's best kept secret. As we both know in marketing terms and PR terms, that's not a good thing. So I was sort of, head in hands moment,
Let's not talk about it.
Everybody needs to know about this place. And, I didn't really come in with any kind of business acumen or anything like that. Yeah, I kind of watched The Apprentice and stuff, but that was pretty much it. And I just went, let's go back to absolute basics. Let's reduce our costs and let's go on a marketing offensive. We've built from there on, and in the space of...
Just tell me where you were, mate, and where you are now. Like when you did that, have you got a sort of how much you've grown since then?
Well, to put some kind of metrics to it, the business was, charity was turning over 600,000-700,000. We now do 1.4 million. We probably engage 6,000 to 8,000 people a year. We now have 20,000 people through the door. Just using those metrics alone sort of shows the growth. And the most exciting thing for me is we ain't finished yet. It's still scratching the surface of how much we could actually do. And everybody wants to come and see us when it's nice and sunny, but a lot of people don't know we're open all year round. And actually some of the activities we do are really powerful when perhaps the weather's a little bit more extreme, because that risk of falling in, well, actually that's a real risk. You might get cold, whereas in the summer, obviously nobody's bothered. It's like, as Peter Kay described, it's like the south of France.
That step you made where you pitched to the trustees, did they go, right, okay, David, we want to make you CEO now?
No, that kind of came a further 6 to 8 months down the line. Obviously I was an unknown quantity. I'm
Wild card.
exactly.
Have you always been a bit of a wild card?
I'd like to say I live on the edge a little bit to some degree, and I would say I'm a risk taker, but very, very calculated in my risks. And I think when I look back at some of the things that have happened, because obviously we had a fantastic 2019, the centre's building, I've just written a 5-year development plan, and guess what hits? So, but then...
I mean, talk to me about the risk you took about buying that client, because I love that, mate.
I mean, there was an opportunity, and at the time, rightly so, we were heavily under restrictions. But one thing I'm incredibly proud of, and I've never found any evidence to say otherwise, is that we were the first centre of our kind to reopen. So our actual closure period was only from the 23rd of March to the 6th of June 2020. That was our only fixed closing period, because during the other lockdowns you could still support special educational needs and stuff. So we never actually closed apart from that first down. And obviously, we don't want to get into kind of political debates or stuff like that, but we wouldn't have survived if we'd have just shut the doors, as many businesses unfortunately haven't. So from the outset, I was studying white papers and guidance and trying to work out, right, how can we do this, but how can we do this safely? And I remember you look on our YouTube, and I produced this video, and you look back on it now, and we had one-way systems and cleaning stations, and we had to have groups of less than 6 and all this kind of stuff. But actually, the feedback we got is that the community needed this. They needed an opportunity to get outside and do something. Jump forward a couple of months, of course, then everyone's talking about being outside is a mitigating circumstance. Get out, get fresh air, go walking, do these things. But the problem we had with schools is that they couldn't put them in a coach to bring them to the centre. So you have to start thinking differently, and you're thinking, right, we've got these young people who are in desperate need of some form of outdoor activity. How are we going to get to them? I know what I'll do. I'll go and buy a mobile climbing wall, or set up a whole outreach project.
Of what?
It was about 15k at the time.
Not knowing that it's going to work.
No, at the same time, I was looking at a cash flow forecast, thinking we're going to run out of money at Christmas. But it paid for itself in 3 months. Yeah. And I look back on things like that and think that could have gone wrong, but it didn't. And I think it's an interesting one now. I'm 4 or 5 years worth of experience and that kind of side of things, and those calculated risks, there's always going to be a which way is it going to go. Yeah. But if you can weigh the evidence towards the benefit, and you've got the drive and the passion to push it forward, it becomes less of a calculated risk, and actually you were mitigating your own risk. I kind of knew it would work because you had the demand there. You just had to provide the answer.
You ever thought you were going to be a CEO of the company?
No. And
did you look at it and kind of go, wow, I'm really proud of myself?
No, not like that. At first when there was talk of it, because we sort of played around with a few titles, because we'd actually made the previous CEO redundant, so obviously not to get into a kind of HR debate, but it wasn't something we could replace straight away. So I went from sort of centre manager to executive director to then chief exec. And at first it was kind of like I'm chasing a bit of a title because it'll look good on LinkedIn, it'll look good on my CV. But I'm still doing the same job that I did almost when I walked through the door. Yeah. So in my head, nothing's kind of really changed until last year when I actually took a slightly different post with my directorship at the university as well. So that then changed things again. But yeah, to me, I'm still just there to ensure that organisation continues to be successful.
Where does the leadership come in? How have you learned that? How have you...
That's an interesting question. I pay a lot of it down to I played relatively competitive rugby for the best part of 18 years. Captained my local town, numerous number of teams, and I just think that is such a unique situation when you sit in a changing room, and to one side of you've got somebody who's a multimillionaire, to the other side you've got a bricklayer, or to the other side you've got somebody on minimum wage and somebody else across the room who's struggling to provide their family, and just all manners of characters. You've got to pull them together to get them to work towards one goal, and I think I was lucky enough to do that at a relatively young age, and I think I've taken a lot of those learnings. From a reflective point of view, I would say I was quite emotionally intelligent. in that I tend to empathise with a lot of people, and I believe that creating opportunities and structures and things like that for people to be successful is the way to get the best out of people. And it's happened with outdoor learning. So we jump back forward, 20 years ago. Outdoor learning was quite military.
Yeah.
So we would get people on board and we would just scream and shout at them to get up that hill or to climb that wall or climb that mountain, whatever it would be. And if they broke down and cry, well, it was just character building, and we just get. And what we realised very, very quickly is that actually that's not a good thing, and that you're creating that negative repetition, that negative experience. So now it's all about self-goals, self-led, very, very person-centric. So just as a really basic example, when people sort of do our tree climbs now, we get the young people or the adults, whoever it is, to set their own targets. And of course, as instructors, we're going to try and encourage them to beat that. But if they go into a state where they're in a panic or anything like that, we're just going to bring them back down, calm them down, go again. And it's better understanding of that kind of old academic model of you stretch zones and your comfort zones.
Yeah.
And actually we always thought, well, if we push people into their panic zone, they're going to learn. Well, actually, no. If you're in your panic zone, that's when you go back into your flight, fight, or freeze kind of model. And we don't want that, because then nothing's happened. So we want to stretch people and we want to challenge people, and that's true of any kind of walk of life.
Yeah, it was interesting you were talking to me about when we were going through the last section, the tree climb area, that you're not setting people up for failure, you're setting up for success.
Definitely.
And when the CEOs come in and stuff, and you're giving them the communication that we talked about, that how does that person not tap into their ego and kind of go that it's it does benefit them to kind of go, maybe I'm not communicating properly, and maybe I need to reflect on myself.
I think business and business leaders are changing, and the dinosaurs that sort of work those kind of hierarchical models and you jump how high kind of thing, longevity aren't going to still be around. They aren't going to exist. I work a lot with young people. I work a lot with graduates, people who are going into the world of work, and our young people are changing. Those needs are changing, and as businesses, as organisations, as employers, we need to be ready to accept that new wave of people coming through. And these are people who are very astute, very engaged with their emotions, and also engaged with things like their kind of wants and needs from work. And if we're not there to give that to them, we're going to lose. And it's an incredibly competitive recruitment kind of environment out there as well. So it is interesting, and I think those leaders who are reflective leaders, who reflect on their decisions, reflect on their actions, are the ones that are good, that sort of continuous development, continuous growth. They're down
at the Anderton Centre, they're there for that, aren't they?
So they've already bought in, potentially. But no, it does happen.
Beautiful, mate, isn't it? Beautiful work, isn't it?
It's good stuff.
Yourself and your flaws. Setting challenges up not for failure but for success, and I really like the way you framed that. I was like, when we did the ball thing where everybody was throwing the ball and kind of saying the name first, the whole thing changed, and then that person received it, was saying it.
It's mad, and I put it down to the advancements in technology and all these kind of things, and they've been absolutely fantastic for us. But those kind of core human emotions, to want to speak, to have a conversation, to engage, it's getting less and less. I go into offices now where everyone's just communicating via Teams across desks, and you're losing some of those coffee cooler conversations, those what were you doing at the weekend kind of stuff. It's just 9 to 5, grind, and I just think there's a huge opportunity for organisations to engage with this sort of stuff, because it'll reap the benefits. We're seeing organisations that are doing some corporate development with us at the moment, and the employees are going back into the work with enthusiasm, productivity is going up, sickness and absenteeism is going down.
It sounds nuts, doesn't it? But people don't understand, do they? They don't understand it.
And businesses will invest in, taking their team out to go bowling on a Friday night or go to the pub on the Friday night. And don't get me wrong, there's 100% paid place for that and that social interaction stuff. But actually,
it's not the same.
It's not the same. So if you're able to create a structured environment where people feel comfortable, because that's often a challenge. People see things like the outdoor activities that we do as they get quite apprehensive, or I don't want to go on water, I don't want to climb up high or anything like that. Actually, some of our best work comes from just a group trying to achieve a problem-solving activity. And that doesn't have to be a heavy lifting, heavy shifting, moving. A simple could be like the ball activity or a jigsaw activity or whatever it might be. The activity almost becomes irrelevant. It's the fact you've got a group of people there, idea sharing, trying to achieve the same goal.
It's the same with branding, mate, and the same with the business. It's like all of us have got a shared vision, and let's work together as a team to get to that shared vision. The ups, the downs, and let's communicate about when we're low. Let's communicate when we're high, and it's amazing, mate. It's amazing. But doing a simple thing down at the Anderton Centre can start that ripple effect.
Definitely. And I'm a realist. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. For some organisations it's not going to be the right fit, but what we're finding more and more is that because we are now quite bespoke on how we put our programmes together, we don't just have a business come in to go kayaking, because actually kayaking might not be the right activity for what they're wanting to achieve. So part of our process is we'll do a bit of a fact find, we'll do a bit of a short kind of interview, kind of questionnaire, to get a better understanding of what you're looking to get out. Because I also appreciate, as a business owner, if you're going to spend some money on sending your team to the Anderton Centre, you actually want some return on that investment. And rightly so. And I think that's probably something that's changed quite dramatically, in that now we want to provide that return on investment. We want the follow-up. We want to know if it's been successful, and create programmes that make a real difference.
What is the one that really sort of like strikes an impact with you? Which is, the one that strikes me when you were talking to me about the fire pit.
Okay,
Just talk to me a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're lucky enough to have around 4 acres of woodland across the site, which creates, it's actually the site of old Anderton Hall, which was a Georgian property knocked down 1939, 1940. But you feel as you're walking around that you're stepping into the terrace gardens of that property, and there's some fantastic photos actually on our website of what it used to look like. So you can be wandering around the centre 1 minute, drop down another level, and suddenly you're in a different world. And I think that kind of I described as our bushcraft area, when you drop down there, it just changes, and you're in the woods and you're in the woodland. And we've got 2 fantastic kind of bushcraft shelters with fire pits and stuff. But what we find, both with adults and with young people, especially when we're doing kind of longer residential or repetitive projects, we'll ask them, what's been your most favourite thing? And 2 things always come up. One, jumping off the end of the pontoon into the water, and the other one is sat around the campfire, whether that be toasting marshmallows or popcorn and stuff, because that's when the people are talking about their experiences. And the one thing I try and compare it to is it's, if you book a holiday, actually the excitement comes from leading up to the holiday. And it's almost that. It's not the actual doing of the activities, it's the talking and getting excited about what's happened, and you did that and that was funny, and all these kind of interactions. And there's also a lot of kind of psychology now that we struggle as humans to have, as we're now doing, eye to eye and face to face contact. So actually by putting in a situation, parents often say, don't they, if you're going to have a serious conversation with the kids, put them in the back seat sort of thing, because then they're not eye to eye. Sat around a campfire, the focus is the fire, and actually conversation just flows. A really interesting project that came out of that COVID stuff that we won't talk about. We hosted a number of teacher interaction days, because teachers were teaching, where other businesses were still closed, we were still in lockdown, but the schools were open. But they were so isolated within their roles because staff rooms were closed, and you literally came in, you taught your kids, and you went home. So we created these opportunities, and literally all it was 6 teachers doing a little bit of activity and then sat around having a brew and campfire. I can remember at least multiple times where they'd be there for 5-6 hours just talking. And we'd almost have to say, like, we did close an hour ago. And are you going home today? Because we created that opportunity.
God, they must have been craving that connection,
yes, and that sort of resonates with me quite strongly to see that. Yeah. And I think that's probably true of perhaps a number of organisations would benefit from that kind of just taking that time away from the day-to-day grind. And there's the whole kind of creative and developmental side of things as well. I do joke, but I quite often have walk-in meetings and outside meetings.
Yeah, walk and talk.
Walk and talk.
I do exactly that.
Because I don't know whether it might be just me, and I'm not saying it works for everyone and stuff like that.
To it.
But remove the walls, remove the boundaries, and if I'm stuck and I'm sat there at my desk and I haven't got a solution for a problem, a 10-minute walk around the site and I'll have it. 9 times out of 10. And it's mad how constricted sometimes your brain can feel within a closed wall environment. But just taking that time to get outside, breathing a bit of nature. And I'm not airy-fairy with this sort of thing. I'm just sharing my experience.
Why'd you say that? Why'd you say airy-fairy?
I just think it's obviously there's a different kind of side to things where, I don't know,
the spiritual quality kind of.
Yeah, I guess so. And it's I'm not interested in taking my clothes off and running around the woods naked or anything like that. Like I'm just sharing.
That doesn't go on just to let everyone
No, absolutely not. I'm just sharing my experience of where I've had a benefit, or where I've seen businesses have benefit, or more regularly where I've seen young people have tremendous impact.
It is giving them that connection, spirituality, whatever you call it. That connection with nature is spiritual for me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these kids are not getting that.
Definitely.
That connection with Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, whatever you kind of want to frame it. There's something that you cannot explain to somebody. When I go wild camping and try to explain it to someone, and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I said, I can't explain it. You've got to be there.
But we've got to be honest, to some people that would sound like absolute hell on earth.
Yeah.
And so where I come from it is I try and be quite generalist, and absolutely I'm on board. I was in North Wales last week with my dogs, and we just went up onto the Gliders, and we were walking, and I was happy as Larry. Yeah. For other people that sounds like hell on earth, but what I'm saying is for everybody, anybody just spending a little bit more time outside will see some tangible benefits, and there's reams and reams of academic research to prove that. So it doesn't have to be to the extremes of perhaps we enjoy the outdoors. And I think that's the beauty of the Anderton Centre, is it really does cover all bases, and it's sort of there's something for everybody.
It's so hard to market, mate, isn't it? Something that you can't explain to somebody. So you, like you said, you've got to really sort of like dumb it down into corporate teamwork building, where really they're not really getting that. They're getting something else that they've never really felt before. Yeah. And then that shared experience at the end is like, you can't market that.
That's the magic.
That's the intent.
Yeah, definitely. And that's also the difference between we pride ourselves, and we're accredited and sort of things delivering high quality outdoor learning. So this isn't sort of bad mouthing competition or anything like that, but a lot of centres it's about the experience. You think about the rise in things like voucher and the sort of coupons and stuff. What are we going to do this weekend? Right, we're going to go and try kayaking, and you might go and you go kayaking, and it's an hour experience, and great, tick that box, get the picture for Instagram, on to the next thing. And we have opportunities for that. That's what our pay and play sessions are designed for. But actually the majority of our work is the more high quality stuff, and it's not just the activity, it's everything that surrounds it. And you alluded to there, one of our key outcomes, we have 10, is environmental awareness. So actually encouraging and creating an appreciation for the environment, and that if you're enjoying this activity, well, how can we maintain this, and how can we make sure that this is available for the generations to come? It's really interesting when you start to delve into, it's not just about the activity. It might be the tree identification, it might be things like the softer skills that we're now sort of calling power skills, as we were talking about before, communication, building resilience, problem solving, all key life skills that you'd think just doing that activity, I'm just doing the activity. Well, you are, but you're getting so much more.
Yeah. It's just walking across like the balance beams and stuff, and you fall off, and don't get frustrated, just get back on and try it again, keep failing. You just feel like you're in a safe space to fail.
Failing's good, right?
Yeah.
How do we learn if we don't fail and if we don't try? If we were talking about before where I had success with a climber, well, it's been one or two things I've done that have perhaps not gone so successful. We don't tend to talk about them as well.
Yeah.
But from every one of those failures, you take learning, right?
Yeah.
And in particular for us at the Anderton Centre, we've got sort of some core values based around passion, based around our customer focused, but continuous improvement. Where the centre is not the same as where it was 5 years ago. It's not the way it's the same it was 6 months ago, and it'll be completely different in 6 months, because we're trying to create within our organisation that constant learning, that constant feedback. I had a huge issue when I first arrived, actually, with instructors in particular, didn't want to be observed. And I couldn't get to the bottom of it. Why would you not want to be observed? Oh, because you're just going to tell me I'm rubbish, or this is where I need to improve. I'm like, well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Don't you want to know how to get better? Don't you want to share or gain that experience? So we had to have a whole cultural change. Yeah. And it's great now because we got apprentices and new instructors coming through the door, and they're banging on the door. Well, when's my next observation? When am I doing that? I want to go for this. I want to get this next sign off. And it's just great to see that kind of change. And again, that's what we're trying to promote as well.
Big thing, that rugby mindset, mate, isn't it? Working as a team.
Yeah.
Massive. I don't think people have worked as a team before in that capacity. There's obviously a bit of banter and stuff like that, but you have got a shared vision and you're all rooting each other, but you've got to communicate properly.
Yeah, and different with different people. And I speak to, I'm not really involved with the club I used to play for now per se, but I've still got huge friendship groups from it and so forth, and we see some of the challenges that are now happening. And I say, like, listen, when I was captain, I would know that Joe Bloggs, he needed a phone call. Text him, no response. Message him, no response. He needed a phone call. If you don't ring him, he ain't playing Saturday. Mr. Smith, he needs a message. Ring him, he'll never answer the phone. So-and-so needs an email. And you had to understand how these people receive communication. And, we were on the conversation about that side of things. And people forget that communication is very much a two-way street. And if you don't consider the receiver, you're failing. You're failing in your communication. So if you don't appreciate how that person receives information best, I used the example, didn't I, of the kind of all-staff email. Yeah. Which makes me grind my gears a little bit, but I have to send them. Sometimes it's just general communications and stuff, but about 20% of my team will read an all-staff email. So unless I'm prepared to go out and go, well, actually, the instructors are never near any computers. So yes, they've got an Anderton Centre email address, but what use is an all-staff email? Yeah. I either need to speak to them, I need to look at old-school pigeonholes, or I need to think of how I can get that message in their hand. And of course, then the final part of the coffin is actually how do they then confirm to me that they've received that message,
which is probably the most important bit.
Definitely,
isn't it?
Definitely, and it's really interesting because I've got some fantastic staff who literally, if I send them an email, they'll email me straight back going, got it, understand it, or I'll get somebody who'll check in, or I'll ring somebody, and then we've got this kind of two-way thing going quite nicely. And again, that's the kind of stuff that we would promote through the sort of corporate team development stuff. But really, it's not us telling people, oh, this is what you're doing wrong, this is what you're doing wrong. It's about us using the outdoor activities to highlight improvements. So you say, okay, like with the tennis ball thing, it's great, I'm passing you the ball. But how do you know that I'm receiving the ball from you? You need to tell me. Yeah. And actually, where's it going next? You need to pass that message on, and then that person needs to convert.
It's a nuts thing, mate. It was a nuts thing.
So,
and when's the last time you threw a ball to someone as well? It just I was like, this feels really weird.
Yeah.
There was a playful nature, there was a communication side, it was learning, it was all bundled, and at the end of it, it was like a different group. I was like, what's going on here? It's like, some people I've not even met, and I'm throwing a ball to someone, I'm like,
that's why it's a great kind of icebreaker.
Once you've got rid of your ego a little bit, because there's a bit of an, I don't want to do this, it's like a bit...
It's a bit silly, this. I don't do this.
About. But once that's gone, there's something really, really nice about it, a moment.
Cool. It's nice that you saw that.
Yeah. What have you got coming up, mate? What's on the horizon? I know you said about changing rooms.
Yeah, so we have actually got planning permission for an extension, and one of my focuses over the last couple of years is I'm also quite passionate about removing some of the boundaries to taking part in outdoor learning. So whether that means financial boundaries, so we look at grant funding and our own fundraising and patron packages to support people who can't afford to come to the centre, or whether it means removing physical boundaries. So that's specialist equipment. So over the last couple of years, we've acquired a wheelie boat, which is a wheelchair-friendly power boat that goes on the water. We've now got an access dock, which allows us to get wheelchair users into our Hansers, which are sailing boats. We've got specialist paddle sport equipment, again, to just remove some of those boundaries. So we've got some great equipment. What we've probably not got, because the building was never designed to have 20,000 people through it on an annual basis, is the space.
Yeah, so it's not fit for purpose.
So it's not fit for purpose. And now it's how do we improve the facility? And the plans are for 2 huge open plan, accessible changing rooms, built to obviously current standards and so forth. And the kind of business case, if you like, is we'll actually knock through on the top floor to extend our residential capacity. So we're looking to go from 70 to 100 beds, because 6-7 months of the year we're at capacity. So you're thinking, well, people are still wanting to come. We need to create those opportunities for people. So hoping a really kind of busy season. It's been great those last couple of days to actually see the yellow thing in the sky.
It's starting warming up on it.
Although I read something dreadful the other day that says, well, that's it now till June. We're going to have a wet May, but we'll put that to the back of the mind. Hopefully summer is on the way. It's most definitely warming up. And I just encourage people to get outside and enjoy it out there. I mean, it doesn't have to be at the Anderton Centre. Take the dog, go for a nice long walk.
So how do people get in touch with the Anderton Centre? Website? Where do you send people?
Absolutely. So website's a great kind of basis for all information. From a corporate point of view, there is a virtual tour, so you can look at some of the conferencing space for suitability. There's also direct links there to book things like our paddle sport sessions and the courses and so forth. We actually encourage people to just pop down. You can just pop into reception and you get, exactly, and we'll give you a guided tour and show you everything that's available. We're obviously on social media across the usuals: Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, X as we should say, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. So we have got a YouTube channel, so there's loads of videos on there as well for to see stuff that's going on. But yeah, just mad passionate about the more people that know about us, the better.
Hence why we're doing this.
Exactly, and very, very grateful for the opportunity.
I'm very grateful to have you on, mate. Let's just get this message out there. Yeah, got you just in time for your next meeting. So
awesome,
David. Appreciate you, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Goodbye.
Tim Marner, what? You're branded with the best. Tim Marner, what? You're branded with the best.